Hello, hello. All right, good to see you guys. Thanks for having me. I have a presentation with a little bit of background and then talking through some trends that I'm seeing in the outdoor landscape. So let's get rolling. Does this connect? There we go. All right, so I am Regenold. I'm from GearJunkie. GearJunkie is a media company in the US. We cover outdoor gear and adventure. And today I'm going to talk about next generation outdoor trends. So kind of what is the state of the industry? Where's the energy at? What are brands doing? What's media doing? And stepping back for 1 second before I get into the meat of the presentation, this is me. So I'm founder of GearJunkie, and I'm based in the US. I live in Minnesota, which is kind of a northerly state. I'm a journalist by trade, husband, father of 5 kids. They keep me very busy. And I'm also a athlete and travel junkie. So I ran for about 10K yesterday morning on the trails above Hong Kong, and I'm still very sore from it. So you guys have some steep terrain out here. So I cut my teeth as an adventure journalist. I went to journalism school, and then I really tried to just lean into my passion, which is outdoor adventure. And at age 25, I decided to build this newspaper column in a local paper called GearJunkie. And over the years, I built that beat and reputation, and I got hired by New York Times to be kind of the beat reporter on adventure travel. So for 3 years, I traveled the world and did adventures and wrote about it. It was kind of a dream job. At the same time, I was building GearJunkie, and we officially launched in 2006. And it took a few years to get some traction. And by 2010, we were leading in gear reviews and product evaluations. That's the core of what we do. So the staff is objective journalists who look at climbing shoes and tents and backpacks, rate and review the products. We publish 5 to 10 articles per day. We have a newsroom. We try to cover the trends and news in the industry, just not only the products, but also the trends and the people, personalities. And then we do big feature stories like a magazine. We'll do travel articles. We'll do video. And we do industry awards. This is Outdoor Retailer, the big trade show in America. And the goal of GearJunkie is really to be the pulse of the outdoors. So what is happening this day or this week? We try to cover it. We try to be that voice of the space. And from that, we work with all the major brands, from Yeti Cooler to REI to the North Face, on advertising campaigns, media campaigns, and banner ads. We do content commerce, which is affiliate commerce articles, big video campaigns, microsites, contests and sweepstakes for our readers, and then live events. So we're kind of a 360 media company and interface with millions of readers per month. So through this experience, I've learned to just identify trends in the industry, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. But why I originally got into this was for the adventure and for the fun and for pushing limits. I'm a adventure athlete and climber. This is me on a 30-hour adventure race 2 years ago in Northern California. Ice climbing with Conrad Anchor out in Montana. Mountain biking all over the country in America. Doing crazy adventures. This was EDM star Deadmau5. Went jet skiing with him in Miami. One of the weirder things I've done. Had to wear that mouse helmet for part of the time. And trekked to Mount Everest to serve on a crew to document the experience. So I've really tried to lean into this adventure lifestyle and build a life around it, as well as my career. So that's some background. I think I have context on the last 20 years of being involved in the outdoor adventure landscape, both from a personal standpoint, an athlete, adventurer, a family person, and then also a journalist who covers the space. So I'm going to try to break down 10 trends in this industry that I'm seeing, kind of where the energy is at and where things are going. And maybe backing up, two things. This is a US-centric presentation. I'm American, and that's the data that I was looking at. But I think it applies pretty widely to the broader outdoor landscape. And then secondly, maybe to just clarify my premise, the outdoor industry really has roots in a hardcore mountain climber, whitewater kayaker, extreme sports sort of energy and visuals and mentality. And there's been a big shift in the last, I'd say, 10 years away from that and towards a more casual and broader demographic. And that's kind of what I'm going to get into. So that's maybe some premise or some thesis. And it started off, I mean, in general, participation is way up. And over 50% of Americans now consider themselves outdoors people. And there was a huge surge since 2020 with, a 26% surge in more people getting outdoors, according to the Outdoor Industry Association. And from that, there's a major business. So it's the outdoor recreation industry in America is a $1.2 trillion annual industry. So it rivals video gaming and some of those other spaces. And when you say that number, it sounds insane, but it includes biking, skiing, climbing, camping, RVs, fishing, hunting. There's all these different categories. And if you roll that all up into one place, it's a huge number. And that represents about 2.3% of the US GDP. So it's a significant industry, and it's only growing. With that growth, the demographic has broadened. So whereas when I was growing up, it was, if you wanted to learn to rock climb, you would read a book and you'd go out and train on a cliff and you'd maybe have a mentor, and it was difficult to enter a sport like that. Now you can go to a climbing gym, take a few lessons, learn. That's just one example. There's so many easy ways to get into the outdoors. And because of that and other factors, there's just a more broad base of people involved. So with that, the average outings actually decreased according to this survey, but more people were involved. So the core adventurers, people like myself who ultra run and climb, has decreased a little bit. Still 50 outings per year, which is kind of every weekend you're doing something. But this category of casual hikers and people that are into the outdoors for wellness and different things has grown. So the third trend is on demographics and age, and this one was maybe a surprise to me, but Gen Z, so the younger generation, is leading the charge in outdoor participation. So 60% of Gen Z surveyed identified as outdoors people, where 45% of baby boomers. So that was a surprise to me. And so really the energy in this space is millennials and Gen Z and sort of that younger demographic. So the youth is embracing nature, but in a different way. And that's what I'm going to get into here. So this term, from rugged to relevant, I think kind of sums up where the industry is going a little bit. There's a shift from this rugged outdoorsman kind of image to being more relevant, more lifestyle driven. There's things like this Gorp-core trend, which are like an urban outdoor aesthetic. There's outdoor apparel as kind of default everyday clothing. I don't know how many of you wear outdoor brands or performance brands on a day-to-day basis because they're comfortable and they look good and they perform. So that's been a big boon for the industry. And with that observation, this bullet point of apparel sales rising by 24%. So lots of outdoor industry clothing brands have become more mainstream, and that's a huge kind of uplift for the industry. And in my experience, the footwear, apparel, and outerwear parts of the outdoor industry really dominate. They dominate a lot of the focus and budget and marketing, whereas things like tents and backpacks and camp stoves and ice axes, they're all kind of the cool gear, but they just are more niche-y, and I think it's becoming more less a focus in kind of marketing and in retail than when I was getting into the outdoors. So the outdoors is more inclusive than ever. So 46% of women identify themselves as outdoors people. Minorities, Hispanic, Black populations are more involved in the outdoors than ever. And then there's a big surge in urban interest in the outdoors. If you live in a big city, getting outdoors is becoming more important. And then lastly, seniors, older people, are getting outdoors more than in past decades. So for better or worse, something called the Instagram effect has really boosted popularity of the outdoors. And as one bullet, this genre of hiking posts, one estimation was it surged by 3,000%. So you're out there on a hike, take a photo, post it on Instagram. It's just a beautiful scene. It's kind of been a big trend to get people that may not have considered being outdoorsy to see their friends' social media, and it's sort of a flywheel from there. So outdoorsy content is really easy and really easy to post on social media. It looks beautiful. It looks aspirational. And then there's things like All Trails and Strava and all these apps that are just encouraging people to use their phone and technology to interface in different new ways with the outdoors. And I think that FOMO part is really true, a fear of missing out. You see these pictures of someone on a hike or a mountain bike session or with a sunset or a beautiful, you want to be there. And that's sort of imbued this new trend of people getting into the outdoors via seeing their friends and family doing it. Another angle is kind of this purpose-driven. People are looking for meaning in their life and purpose, and the outdoors provides that in some senses. And these bullets are kind of some brand examples of this trend, but several of the big brands in the space have identified this kind of purpose-driven energy within the outdoor ecosystem and built marketing campaigns and give back campaigns around purpose. And closely related is sustainability. There's just a huge cultural push towards being more eco-friendly, more sustainable. And in the survey, 55% of consumers said they seek out sustainable brands, and 1/3 said they would pay more for sustainable brands. And it's becoming really just table stakes with many categories to have recycled product, to have carbon neutral, to have a sustainable message and a sustainable reality behind your products. If you don't have that, you're at a disadvantage because people look for that and expect that. And then finally, there's a big push around used gear and refurbished gear in America, where even big brands like North Face and REI and Arc'teryx, they'll have repurposed, in Patagonia, they'll fix gear and they'll repurpose it, and they're trying to make gear last longer. And that's been a big trend we've seen. And just nature is therapy. People are happier when they spend more time outdoors, and that's proven. And so it's this kind of outdoors RX, this prescription to get off your screen, get outdoors, touch grass. That's real. And society is really recognizing being outdoors, having that outdoors lifestyle is core to being healthy. And finally, it's just technology has really allowed you to interface so much easier. When I was growing up, if you wanted to hike a trail, you would buy a guidebook or you'd get a map and a compass. Now it's all on your phone and it's so accessible. I'm here this week and I'm looking at All Trails. I'm going to go, hike a trail tomorrow right up here on the island because I can see it right on my phone app and get there and safely do this hike. It makes things so much more accessible. So, maybe paradoxically, but technology and screens in some ways have really boosted access and ease of getting into the outdoors. So those are kind of 10 quick trends, and I can certainly talk through that more. But I wanted to next shift to talking tangibly about some of the big brands in our space. And, we'll start with Patagonia, which is long recognized as a leader in kind of having an ethos around several different areas within the outdoors and gear. And Patagonia's had an ethos since its launch, but that's really accelerated in recent years. And I put together kind of this then and now sort of framework to illustrate how these brands have shifted a little bit. So, Patagonia launched with Yvon Chouinard, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, I think, as a brand for climbers, built by climbers for climbers. And all the imagery was kind of hardcore alpine ethos, rock climbing. And from the start, they had a dedication to environmental ethics, but it was still kind of marketed to this core. They pledged money to environmental causes. And then in the 1990s, they were a big apparel company, and they kind of made this internal decision to go from sort of fast growth to long-term focus. And then today, their mission, which they changed a couple years ago, is literally in business to save our home planet. So the company is really extremely mission-driven. That's their marketing. That's their internal communications. They're openly, activist against dam projects and environmental projects. They make their voice known. And they actually, turn the company into a trust and a nonprofit. So it's sort of the ultimate example of purpose and profit aligning. So Patagonia has long been kind of a North Star within this space. But then, maybe lesser known is something like the North Face. So, the North Face was built around outfitting Mount Everest expeditions. And today, I think it's as known for its everyday wear, even its urban aesthetic. And kind of the then and now with these guys is that, it was expedition-proven gear from the start. It was some of the best equipment on the planet, literally the top of the highest mountains. It was very male-dominated, very climbing culture, conquer the mountains. The iconic "Never Stop Exploring" motto was the energy of the North Face. And they built this brand through the imagery of aspirational, sponsored athletes on the toughest mountains in the world. And the design was very function-first, very tech-innovative. And that built an amazing brand. But in the last 10 years, they've kept that foundation but built upon it. So they built, kind of in the today column, the North Face is really focused on a broader consumer base and motivating everybody to get outdoors via all sorts of different events and marketing programs. And they've really leaned into this kind of urban streetwear and fashion collabs with Skims and Gucci and all sorts of brands. Some of the core people think it's silly, but it really does bring a lot of new people into this space, and it kind of opens people's eyes to this new genre of apparel and gear and outerwear. And like many big brands, they integrate eco-friendly materials and have a sustainability focus with kind of every product they produce. And the athlete team now is, I would say, much more personality-driven, community-driven, whereas before it was more driven on who's the fastest, who's climbing the highest, who's doing the craziest stuff. So the whole energy of the North Face built upon this foundation has shifted. My third of 4 different examples is REI. So REI is the kind of dominant retailer in America for outdoor gear, and they drive a lot of trends and energy and product sales. And they launched, I think, 70 plus years ago as a co-op in Seattle, and it was really built as a brand for pretty hardcore outdoors people that wanted access to gear. So the then with REI is that you had to be a member to be involved in the co-op. Their catalogs were very technical and product heavy, and they really curated to serious adventurers and people that wanted the best gear. REI has always been open to introducing people to the outdoors, but I would say the messaging was very gear centric and maybe a higher barrier point of entry. And today, REI has shifted to a retailer that famously does not sell any products on Black Friday, with the biggest sale day of the year in America. They have a campaign called Opt Outside, where they encourage everybody not to buy products, but to get outside for that day with your family and friends. They have all kinds of programs that advance inclusion and diversity. They're very conscious of used gear in a circular gear economy, and they do rental gear, just trying to encourage people to use gear longer and not necessarily just buy a new thing. And then the co-op can be a center for community gathering. They utilize their spaces with their, I think, 100 plus stores around America. And then they're really trying to reinvent their business around zero waste and purpose-led. So the last example is Arc'teryx, which maybe is the most interesting to me. Arc'teryx launched really as a elite climbing gear company, I think in the mid-90s. And it's evolved into this global brand which exudes technical prowess, but has kind of found itself with a new audience of a broader consumer base and even a fashion base. So Arc'teryx was founded in Vancouver area in Canada by very hardcore climbers. Some of their original products were climbing harnesses and very technical outerwear, $600-800 jackets made of Gore-Tex. And they focused on this minimalist, very high performance gear, the best materials, the highest innovation. They're almost like a cult status for mountaineers. And kind of like North Face, they sort of built this really amazing foundation, and now today they've expanded upon it. So today Arc'teryx blends this kind of urban style with an outdoor ethos. It promotes durability as a sustainability method. So if you're going to buy a jacket and it lasts you 8-10 years of hard use, that's better than buying a new jacket every 2 or 3 years. They've got these circularity programs. There's this called Rebird. And they do all kinds of programs around trying to educate people and get people into climbing and other sports. And then like a lot of these outerwear companies, they're trying to get rid of PFC chemicals and just become more sustainable. So that's Arc'teryx. I think it's an interesting case study. And kind of to wrap it up, as I was heading out of America, I just saw this social media post, and I thought it was kind of timely and interesting, so I threw it in at the end. But it kind of wraps up a lot of what I was trying to get my head around with this presentation. And it looks at the 2025 Outdoor Industry Report, which just came out. This guy's name is Roger Herney. He's a founder of an agency called Off Madison Avenue. He was analyzing the report, and his takeaway was that a seismic shift in the outdoor retailer where casual consumers now lead prioritizes comfort, identity, and mental wellness over performance. He urges brands to adapt and align strategies with the evolving motivations to thrive in a dynamic market. So what does that mean? There's just some major key behavioral shifts in this industry. Casual consumers now dominate, so that the woman hiking versus the man on a peak are driving the market trends. This new demographic seeks comfort, well-being, a sense of belonging. And then the technical gear side, it's struggling. Costs are high, and the barrier to entry is high. And consumers are somewhat overwhelmed, and they gravitate towards simpler activities like hiking, walking, bird watching. And on top of that, there's all these health and wellness movements and energy, and that's surging. And I think the last point is that there is uncertainty in this world, and that's reshaping how people are spending their money. People maybe are getting more simple and trying to have the outdoors as part of their lifestyle. And I think to wrap it up, by embracing these insights, brands or suppliers can connect authentically with consumers by fostering loyalty and unlocking new opportunities for growth in 2025. So that's what I've got for you guys. Hopefully that made sense. I think there's a new energy in the outdoors. It's around kind of the more common person that wants to be outside, and less the guy on the top of the mountain with the ice axe in the extreme scenario. And I think it's a good thing. The more people outside, the better this will be. Thank you, guys.